Do not respond. Episode 1. I got a text from myself, but I never sent it. Midnight, the first message, it came in the middle of the night. A soft ding that cut through the silence of my apartment. Half asleep, I reached for my phone, expecting some late-night notification spam or a wrong number. Instead, it was a text message. From me. The number was mine. My own contact name. My own profile picture staring back at me from the screen. But the strangest part wasn't the sender. It was the timestamp. Sent 3 years ago. I blinked, my brain still foggy from sleep. That was impossible. I never sent this. I barely even used my phone 3 years ago except for work calls and occasional texts to my sister. With a growing sense of unease, I tapped to open it. Do not respond. I'm already too late. You don't have much time. My heart started pounding. Who was them? For a second, something flickered in my mind. A sense of déjà vu. Like I'd read this message before. But the memory was gone before I could grasp it. 8:24 a.m., a second message by morning. I convinced myself it was a glitch. Some kind of weird data error, maybe a duplicate message caused by a system update. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was forgetting something. At work, I kept checking my phone. No more messages. No missed calls. Nothing. I almost laughed at myself. It was just a text. Then, just as I got up to grab a coffee, my phone vibrated. Another text. From me. This time, my breath caught in my throat before I even read it. You have 48 hours left. Don't let them find you. What the hell? 11:15 a.m. I tried calling back. I don't know what I expected. Maybe for the call to fail. Maybe for someone else to answer. But when I dialed, it went straight to voicemail. My own voicemail. And then I heard something I had no memory of ever recording. If you're hearing this, it means I failed. It means they got me. And it means you're next. Listen to me very carefully. You need to leave. Now, change your number, move cities, get rid of your phone. Whatever you do, do not respond. Then the line cut off. My blood ran cold. I checked the voicemail settings. It said the message had been recorded 2 years ago, but I had no memory of ever leaving it. 3:42 p.m. The stranger at the cafe. I couldn't focus on work. My boss noticed, asked if I was okay. I lied. At lunch, I went to my usual cafe, one of those quiet places where nobody bothered you if you sat alone too long. I had just taken my first sip of coffee when I noticed him. A man in a black hoodie, sitting 2 tables away. He wasn't drinking anything, wasn't looking at a phone or reading a menu, just sitting there, watching me. I pretended not to notice, pulled out my phone trying to act normal. My fingers hovered over the messages. And then, right as I debated deleting everything, another text came in. He's already there. Don't go home. A cold sweat broke out on my skin. I lifted my eyes slowly. The man in the hoodie wasn't there anymore. 7:15 p.m. I made a mistake. I should have listened. I should have walked straight to the police station or a crowded mall or anywhere but my apartment. But instead, I went home. I locked the doors, closed the blinds, sat in the dark, gripping my phone like a lifeline. And then, the knocking started. Not loud, not desperate, just soft, slow, rhythmic. Knock, knock, knock. I checked my phone with shaking hands. Another text. It's not them knocking. It's you. Don't open the door. I felt my stomach drop into a bottomless pit. It's me? The knocking wasn't normal. It was too steady, too perfectly timed. As if something wasn't knocking to be let in, but knocking just to be heard. My body moved before my brain could stop it. Feet shuffling across the wooden floor, hand reaching for the lock. And then I heard it. A voice. My voice. Let me in. 11:58 p.m. The last message. I don't remember what happened next. I woke up on the floor. My head hurt. My phone was next to me. Screen cracked, buzzing with a final text. You have 24 hours left. As I reached for my phone, I saw it. A fresh bruise forming around my wrist, shaped like fingerprints. Do not respond. Episode 2. The countdown has started. Midnight. The warning, the bruise on my wrist throbbed like something alive. The imprint of fingers, too long, too thin, wrapped around my skin like a reminder. Something had touched me. I sat up, my head spinning. The room was dark, the air heavy, as if I had been lying here for hours. My phone buzzed again, and I forced myself to look at it. You have 24 hours left. The same message, the same countdown, but now a second message appeared beneath it. You need to remember, before they do. Remember what? 8:15 a.m. Strange reflections, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. Even though I never opened the door, I could still hear my own voice on the other side. I stared at my phone, debating whether to respond. Just one text, one word. Maybe that would change everything. But I couldn't. Instead, I forced myself up, splashed cold water on my face, and looked at my reflection. And that's when I saw it. The mirror wasn't showing me. It showed someone else wearing my skin. 9:30 a.m. Another me. I stumbled back, heart pounding. The figure in the mirror didn't move right. When I raised my hand, it hesitated before copying me. When I blinked, its eyes stayed open for just a second too long. I picked up my phone, snapped a picture. But in the photo, I was alone. My reflection wasn't there. Then my phone buzzed again. They're inside now. Find the first message. The first message? The one from 3 years ago. I scrolled up frantically, but it was gone. 12:45 p.m. An unfamiliar number. I left my apartment. I needed air, space, anything to stop the growing pressure in my head. As I walked, my phone vibrated again. But this time, it wasn't from my number. It was from an unknown contact. Unknown. Why didn't you listen? It's happening again. My throat went dry. I typed back, my fingers shaking. Me. Who is this? 3 dots appeared. Typing. Then unknown. You. My phone slipped from my hands, crashing onto the pavement. 3 p.m. The repeating day. The city felt wrong. The streets weren't as busy as they should be. People walked past me without glancing up. The sounds of cars, voices, footsteps. It was all there, but too muted, too distant. I reached the cafe, the same one from yesterday, and the same man in the black hoodie was there. Only this time, when I looked closer, it was me. 3:02 p.m. The message I should have read. I froze. The other me didn't move. He just sat there, hands on the table, staring at his untouched coffee. Then, without looking up, he pulled out a phone and placed it face up. I saw the screen light up. A message. From my number. I stepped closer, heart hammering in my chest, and read the words, "You only have one way out." Then his phone vibrated again. A new message. "Don't look away." My breath hitched. My fingers twitched. And then, without thinking, I blinked. 3:03 p.m. The moment everything changed. When I opened my eyes again, the man in the hoodie was gone. Not just gone. Erased. The table was empty. The chair still rocked slightly, as if someone had just stood up. But he had never moved. I checked my phone. Another message. Run. 6:45 p.m. The hospital files. I didn't run. I should have. But instead, I followed the only lead I had. My old phone records. Something in my gut told me that the answers weren't just in the messages. They were in me. I had to dig deeper. And that's how I found the hospital records. 3 years ago, patient admitted under my name. But the strange part? The date of discharge. Exactly 24 hours before today. 11:55 p.m. The final choice. I stood outside my apartment. My phone buzzing nonstop. Messages flooding in. Each one the same. It's almost time. I reached for the door handle. And then I felt it. A hand on my shoulder. Cold. Unfamiliar. But when I turned around, there was no one there. My phone vibrated one last time. I looked down. Don't go inside. Do not respond. Episode 3. The door that shouldn't exist. 12 a.m., a choice I didn't make. I stood frozen at my apartment door. The last text message glowed on my screen. Don't go inside. But my hand was already on the doorknob. I wasn't sure if I was opening it or if something was pulling me in. The door swung wide, and that's when I saw it. A second door, standing in the middle of my living room. 12:05 a.m. The door that shouldn't exist. It wasn't a closet. It wasn't a hidden passage. It was just a door, completely separate from the walls, standing upright on its own. Plain, wooden, no frame, no hinges, and it was slightly open. A sliver of darkness stretched beyond it, deeper than it should have been. Like a hole punched into reality. My phone buzzed again. Do not open it. 12:10 a.m. The scratches on the floor. I took a step closer. My breath shallow, my pulse hammering in my ears. The floor around the door was scratched like someone or something had been dragged through it. My head felt light. I had been here before, not in a dream, not in a nightmare, but 3 years ago. Before I could react, another message popped up. You need to remember, the last time you opened it, you didn't come back. I staggered back, my legs shaking. 12:30 a.m. The voice from inside. Then I heard it. A voice, soft, familiar, coming from inside the door. Please, let me out. I nearly dropped my phone, because the voice wasn't just familiar, it was mine. 12:40 a.m. The video file. My fingers fumbled as I scrolled through my phone, desperately searching for anything that could explain this. And then I found it. A video. A file labeled Last Entry. My stomach twisted. The timestamp said it was recorded 3 years ago. I hit play. The screen flickered. A dark room. Heavy breathing. My face. Pale, terrified, whispering to the camera. If you're watching this, it means I failed. Don't trust anything you see, anything you hear, anything that wears your face. And whatever you do not open the door. 12:45 a.m. I didn't listen. I should have stopped. I should have run. But I took another step forward, and the door opened wider on its own. A rush of freezing air poured out, pulling at me, swallowing the light. Something was standing in the darkness, something wearing my face. My phone vibrated violently. Another message. Run. 12:47 a.m. The hand that grabbed me. I turned to run, but something cold and bony clamped around my wrist. I screamed, twisting, kicking, and suddenly, I was on the floor. The door was gone. My living room was normal again, except for one thing. My wrist, a new bruise shaped like fingers. And then my phone buzzed one final time. You have 12 hours left. Do not respond. Episode 4, the 12-hour mark, 12:48 a.m. The mark on my wrist. I couldn't move. The bruise on my wrist, darker now, deeper, felt like something had dug into my bones. I rubbed my fingers over the skin, trying to convince myself it wasn't real, that none of this was real. But the cold, aching pressure told me otherwise. My phone vibrated again. 12 hours left. I stared at the words, my pulse hammering in my ears. What happens when the time runs out? I wasn't sure. I wanted to know. 1:30 a.m. The static call. I don't know why I answered. The unknown number flashed across my screen, and before I could stop myself, my thumb was already pressing accept. I held the phone to my ear, breath shallow. Nothing but static. And then a voice. My voice. But not just my voice. It was distorted, as if layered on top of 100 other whispers. You should have left. The call cut off. I dropped my phone. 3:15 a.m. The man in the hallway. The apartment felt smaller, like the walls had crept in an inch closer since midnight. I didn't want to sleep. I didn't want to turn off the lights. So I sat on my couch, phone in hand, watching the door. And then, a shadow moved under the doorframe. A slow, deliberate step. Something was on the other side. I held my breath, gripping my phone like it was a weapon. And then the knocking started. Knock, knock, knock. I knew better than to open it. But my phone had other plans. It vibrated violently in my palm. A new text flashed across the screen. He's already inside. 3:30 a.m. The reflection that wasn't mine. I turned my head slowly. Too slowly. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my body wasn't listening. Across the room, my hallway mirror reflected something that shouldn't be there. Not my reflection. The man at my door, standing behind me, watching. I spun around, nothing. I was alone, but the mirror said otherwise. 4 a.m., the note under my door. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at my own reflection, waiting for it to do something it wasn't supposed to. Then I heard the softest scrape, something sliding under my front door. A note, handwritten. With only 4 words, check your left eye. I stumbled to my feet, heart slamming against my ribs. My left eye burned, had been burning since I woke up on the floor last night. I ran to the bathroom, flipped on the light, and pried my eyelid open with shaking fingers. And there, beneath the bloodshot red veins, hidden deep within the iris, a number. The countdown wasn't just on my phone. It was inside me. 6:45 a.m. The video file I didn't record. I don't remember falling asleep. But when I opened my eyes, it was morning. The final morning. My phone was in my lap, screen on, as if it had been waiting for me to wake up. A new video file sat at the top of my gallery. Recorded. Today, 6:45 a.m. I pressed play. The footage was shaky, dark. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then my stomach turned to ice. It was my apartment, but I wasn't holding the camera. Someone else was. The footage moved, creeping down the hallway, pausing at my bedroom door. Then, ever so slowly, the door creaked open, and the camera panned to my bed. To me, sleeping, oblivious. I slammed the phone down, breath shallow, while rising in my throat. Someone had been here. Someone had been watching. And they wanted me to know. 12 p.m., 6 hours left. I can't stay here. I don't know where I'm going, but I can't be here when the countdown hits 0. My phone vibrates one last time as I grab my keys. It doesn't matter where you go. You won't escape. Not this time. I don't have a plan. I just start running. And behind me, in the apartment I will never return to, the mirror ripples. Something inside it is smiling. Do not respond. Episode 5. The reflection is following me. 12:05 p.m. Running nowhere. I didn't stop running. The air outside was thick, heavy, wrong. My footsteps pounded against the pavement as I turned random corners, trying to shake the feeling that something was right behind me. I didn't check my phone. I didn't need to. I already knew what it would say. 6 hours left. 12:45 p.m. The stranger on the bus. I got on the first bus I saw. It didn't matter where it was going. I just needed to be anywhere but here. I took a seat near the back, heart still racing. The world outside blurred past in streaks of gray and brown. Then I felt it, that sensation of being watched. Slowly, I turned my head. A woman sat across the aisle, facing me. Her clothes were soaked, as if she had been standing in the rain for hours. Her hair dripped onto the seat, but there was something worse than that. She was smiling, not at me, at my reflection in the bus window. 12:47 p.m. She spoke. I tried to ignore her. I turned my gaze back to my lap, gripping my phone like a lifeline. Then she whispered, "You should check your mirror." I stiffened. Slowly, painfully, I turned my head back to the window. My reflection was gone. The glass showed the rows of empty seats behind me, but I wasn't there. I gasped, lurching away from the window, and the woman, she was gone too. 1:30 p.m. The broken reflection. I stumbled off the bus at the next stop, panting. My mind screamed at me to focus, to find a way out of this. But where do you run when the thing chasing you is your own reflection? My phone buzzed. Another message. It's not just the mirrors. It's every surface. Anything that sees you. I swallowed hard. How long had it been watching me? Parked car sat near the curb. I hesitated, then took a cautious step forward. Just enough to see my face reflected in the tinted window. Except it wasn't my face. It was smiling too. Then the window shattered. 3 p.m., the eye in the glass. I ran. Again. I didn't stop until I found an alleyway where no reflective surfaces could follow me. My chest burned, my vision swam. Then I saw it. A shard of glass from the broken window, and within it an eye. Not mine. It was watching me from inside the fragment, blinking, waiting. I grabbed a rock and smashed the shard to dust. My phone buzzed. It doesn't matter. It already knows where you'll be. For 30 p.m., the store mirror I needed to think, to breathe. I ducked into a convenience store, hoping for a moment of normalcy. The clerk barely glanced at me as I walked toward the back. Then I made a mistake. I looked up. A security mirror loomed above the aisles, curved and distorted. My heart stuttered as I saw myself in it. Only it wasn't me. It was closer than it should be. My reflection wasn't in the same position as me anymore. It was leaning forward, reaching out. I turned and sprinted out of the store. The clerk yelled something, but I didn't stop. Couldn't. 5:55 p.m. The final message. I ran for blocks, avoiding windows, puddles, anything that could hold my reflection. I didn't know where I was going. Then finally I stopped. The sky was dimming. My lungs burned. My legs trembled beneath me. I checked my phone. 1 hour left. I had 1 hour to do what? To run? To hide? To prepare? I didn't know. But something told me that when the time hit 0, I wouldn't be running anymore. And then my reflection stepped out from behind me. Do Not Respond, Episode 6, When the Reflection Walks Free, 5:59 p.m. The final minute. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I could feel it behind me, breathing, waiting. My reflection had stepped out of the glass. And now it was real. My phone vibrated violently in my grip. One final message flashed across the screen. Midnight, time's up. The world went silent. 6 p.m. The first move. I forced myself to turn. And there it was. Me. Same face. Same clothes. Same hands. But the smile was wrong. It wasn't forced or nervous like mine usually was. It was wide, stretched just a little too far, as if it had been practicing in the mirror for years. And now it didn't have to pretend anymore. You should have run farther. His voice was my voice. Only empty. 6:05 p.m. The first attack. It lunged. I barely dodged, stumbling backward onto the pavement. My breath came in ragged gasps, my heart a hammer in my chest. My reflection straightened, tilting its head like it was analyzing me, testing me. Took a step forward. I took a step back. I grinned. Then, in the blink of an eye, it was behind me. A hand clamped around my throat, cold, stronger than it should have been, like something that didn't belong in this world. I thrashed, kicked, but it didn't let go. Then it whispered in my ear, "You don't deserve to be real." 6:10 p.m. The mirrors lie. The pain was unbearable. My vision blurred, black spots dancing across my sight. I reached for anything to fight back. My fingers brushed something cold, a shard of glass, the shattered window. Without thinking, I slammed it into its arm. The reaction was immediate. It shrieked, a horrible, twisted sound, and its arm warped like a ripple in water. I scrambled away, gasping for breath. My reflection clutched its injured limb, the grin faltering for the first time. Then it looked up at me, something dangerous burning behind its eyes. That won't work forever. Then it was gone. Not like someone running away, like a reflection sinking back into the glass. 6:30 p.m. The text that changed everything. I collapsed against the alley wall, my body trembling. It wasn't over. My phone buzzed. I didn't want to look, but I had to. A new message. It's not gone. It's just waiting. Another buzz. Check your reflection, but be fast. My stomach turned to ice. Slowly, I looked around. My eyes landed on the side mirror of a nearby car. For the briefest second, I saw it. Not my reflection. The thing wearing my face. Watching. Then it vanished. 7 p.m. The rules have changed. I stumbled into a diner, trying to force air into my lungs. The place was dim, almost empty, except for a tired-looking waitress behind the counter. The TV buzzed in the background, static interrupting the news anchor's voice. I sat down in the corner, facing the window, and then my phone buzzed again. A different number this time. I hesitated, then opened it. Unknown. It's been watching from the glass for years, but now it's free. I swallowed hard, my hands shaking as I typed back. Me. How do I stop it? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then finally the answer came. Unknown. You don't. 8:30 p.m. The waitress knew I barely touched my food. The waitress came by, pouring me another cup of coffee. She glanced at my shaking hands. You look like you've seen a ghost. I laughed dryly. Something like that. She didn't smile. Instead, she leaned in slightly and said, mirrors don't forget, and they don't forgive. My blood ran cold. She knew. I opened my mouth, but before I could say anything, the diner lights flickered, and in the reflection of the window beside me, it was there. Standing outside, waiting. 9 p.m., the final warning. I didn't move, didn't breathe. My reflection, the thing that wasn't me, stood just beyond the glass, hands at its sides, head tilted in that unnatural way. Then it lifted one hand and knocked. Knock, knock, knock. My phone buzzed. I tore my eyes away, heart pounding as I read the message. Don't let it in. I forced myself to look back, but the reflection was gone. Only the waitress remained, staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. You don't have much time. I barely managed to whisper. Time for what? She placed the check on my table. To decide which one of you gets to stay. 11:30 p.m. 2 of US. I didn't go home. Couldn't. Instead, I found myself in a motel, staring at the bathroom mirror, waiting for it, for me. And then, slowly, my reflection smiled. But I wasn't smiling. Are you sure you're the real one? The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Because deep down, I wasn't. Not anymore. Do not respond. Episode 7. Which one of us is real? 11:35 p.m. The question that changed everything. I couldn't move. The reflection in the mirror was smiling. But I wasn't. Are you sure you're the real one? The words didn't echo from my mouth. They came from the glass. From it. From me. 11:40 p.m. The test. I forced myself to breathe. My mind screamed at me to look away, to break the mirror, to do something. But I couldn't, because deep down I knew. I wasn't sure. There's a way to prove it, my reflection whispered. If you're real. I swallowed hard. My throat felt like sandpaper. How? I grinned. Break the glass. 11:45 p.m. The hammer. I found it in the motel's tool closet. A rusted hammer, heavier than it looked. My hands trembled as I walked back to the mirror. The reflection stood there, waiting. Go on, it urged. If you're real, breaking the glass won't change anything. It made sense, didn't it? I gripped the hammer tighter. Then, just as I raised it, my phone buzzed. I almost dropped the hammer as I pulled it from my pocket. A new message, from an unknown number. Don't break it. That's what it wants. 11:50 p.m. The first crack. My grip on the hammer loosened. The reflection's grin widened. Who do you trust? It asked. Me, or a number on your screen? I hesitated, and that was all it needed. His hand moved before mine did. The hammer swung. The mirror shattered. 11:51 p.m. Something came through. I stumbled back as the glass exploded into a million shards. My heart pounded. My lungs burned. For a split second, everything was silent. Then I heard it. Something moving. Not from behind me, from inside the mirror. The air shifted, like something had stepped into the room. I turned and the lights flickered. There were two shadows on the wall, but I was the only one standing there. 11:55 p.m., the wrong one. I ran. Out of the motel room, down the hall, through the exit. The night air hit my skin like ice. I gasped, my lungs burning. The parking lot was empty, except for one figure. Me, standing in the middle of the pavement, smiling. You shouldn't have done that. 12 a.m., the switch. I stepped back. My feet felt too heavy, my body too slow. Took a step forward, and suddenly I wasn't looking at it anymore. I was looking from it, like I had been pushed backward into something small, cold, suffocating. And then I understood. I was in the glass, and it was in me. 12:10 a.m., trapped. I pounded against the glass, but my fists made no sound. No one would hear me. No one would know. The thing wearing my body turned, stretching its arms, rolling its shoulders, getting comfortable in my skin. Then it reached for my phone. I screamed, but the sound was trapped in the reflection. Type something. A text to my sister. Hey, it's me, just checking in. And then it smiled at me through the glass. See? No one will ever know. Then it walked away, leaving me behind the mirror. Forever. Do not respond. Episode 8. I am no longer me. 12:15 a.m. Trapped behind glass. I pounded against the mirror. No sound. No impact. Just the smooth, cold surface pressing back at me. Through the glass, I watched it, the thing wearing my body, walk away. It stretched my arms, flexed my fingers, rolled my shoulders as if trying to get comfortable inside my skin. Then, it smirked at me through the reflection. Don't worry, I'll take good care of your life. Then it turned and disappeared into the night, and I was gone. 12:30 a.m., no escape. I ran. Or at least I tried. My feet barely made a sound against the infinite blackness beneath me. The mirror world was endless. Everywhere I turned, there were more reflections. More versions of reality, twisting and warping in impossible angles. And in all of them, I wasn't there, like I had never existed. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I froze. Wait, I still had my phone? I fumbled to grab it, fingers trembling as I checked the screen. A single message blinked at me. Unknown. Find the cracks before it's too late. Cracks? I looked around frantically, scanning the endless reflections, and then I saw it. A thin fracture running across one of the mirrors. A way out. 12:45 a.m. The other trapped ones. I sprinted towards the cracked mirror, my breath ragged. As I got closer, the crack spread, splintering like lightning across the glass. Then I saw them. Other people. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Trapped behind different mirrors. Faces twisted in silent screams. Hands pressed against the glass. Eyes wide with hopelessness. Some of them looked like me. Some didn't look human at all. A whisper echoed from the darkness. Once you're here too long, you forget. Forget what? I turned back to the cracked mirror, suddenly desperate to escape. 1 a.m., the first test. I placed my hand against the fractured glass. A voice whispered from the other side. Say your name. I hesitated. That should be easy, right? But when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. Panic surged through me. My name. My name. I knew it. Didn't I? The whisper grew more urgent. Say it, before you forget. Before you become one of us. I forced the words out, voice shaking. I'm... The mirror shuddered. A sliver of light broke through the crack. I had passed the first test, but there would be more. 1:30 a.m. The reflection that wasn't mine. The crack widened, stretching like veins across the glass. I placed my foot forward and froze, because something else moved with me. A shadow just beyond the crack. Another me, not the thing that had stolen my body. Something worse. Its head twitched, its grin too wide, its eyes too empty. "You don't belong here anymore," it whispered. "But you don't belong out there either." Then it reached through the glass and grabbed my wrist. 1:45 a.m. The pain of remembering pain shot through my arm like fire. I struggled, kicking, clawing, trying to break free. But its grip was unbreakable. Images flooded my mind. Memories I had buried. Every lie I had told. Every secret I had kept. The thing behind the glass was feeding on them. My mind fractured. The crack in the mirror widened. I forced a scream through gritted teeth. "I am real," and the shadow vanished. I fell forward, gasping. The crack had become a doorway, a way back. I ran through it. 2 a.m. Back in reality, I stumbled into the street, my breath coming in sharp gasps. The air was cold, real. I touched my face, my arms. I was out, but something was wrong. People walked past me. Cars rumbled by. The world looked normal, except for one thing. No one looked at me, not a single person. It was like I wasn't there, like I was still just a reflection. 2:30 a.m. The final message, my phone buzzed again. A message from my own number. "You think you escaped? Look closer." I lifted my head slowly, and then I saw it. My reflection, still trapped in the glass, still pounding, still screaming, as I turned and walked away. Episode 9, The Reflection That Won't Let Go, 2:35 a.m. The wrong escape. I stood frozen on the empty sidewalk. The city pulsed around me. Cars whooshed by, neon signs flickered, people moved through the streets. And yet, no one saw me, no eyes met mine, no heads turned in my direction. It was like I was a ghost walking through the world. Except, I wasn't the ghost. My real reflection was still in the glass, and it was staring at me, pounding, screaming. My phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown. "You switched places. You're not you anymore." I felt my stomach drop. If I wasn't me, then what was I? 2:45 a.m. The mirrors are lying. I turned sharply, scanning my reflection in every surface I passed. The windows didn't show me. The puddles didn't show me. But then, a storefront mirror. A long, dusty pane of glass next to a closed antique shop. And in it I saw my reflection. Only it wasn't mimicking my movements. It was standing still, watching, smiling. I took a step forward. Didn't. Instead, it lifted a hand and pointed behind me. I turned, and there was nothing there. Then my phone buzzed again. Unknown. It's not in the mirrors anymore. It's here. 3 a.m. The shadow that walks like me. I kept moving. My body felt heavy. My head pounded. Everything felt off. The air was too still. The lights on the street flickered without reason. The sounds of the city muffled, distant, like I was walking through an abandoned movie set. Then I noticed it. A shadow. Not mine. Moving along the pavement beside me, perfectly in sync. Like it belonged to me, except it was just a little too slow. My steps came a fraction of a second before it moved. I stopped breathing, and then it kept walking. It took another step forward, then another. Then it stopped, and turned to face me. 3:10 a.m. The face in the darkness. I wanted to run, but my body felt paralyzed. The shadow stood there, staring. No eyes, no features, just an outline of me, made of shifting darkness. Then it took another step, and for the first time it spoke. "You don't belong here." His voice was mine, only distorted, warped, like it had been scraped against a wall 1,000 times. I gritted my teeth. Then where do I belong? The shadow tilted its head. That's the question, isn't it? Then it lunged at me. 3:15 a.m. The fall into nothing. I stumbled back, my foot catching on the curb. The world tilted. I fell, but instead of hitting the ground, I plunged through it. The city lights disappeared. The sounds of traffic faded. The street beneath me shattered like glass, and I was falling, through reflections, through versions of myself, some screaming, some crying, some smiling. 3:30 a.m. The place between mirrors, I landed hard on black glass. The air was thick, suffocating. Around me, mirrors stood tall, stretching into nothingness. This wasn't the real world. This was the place between reflections. A prison for those who had switched places. Footsteps echoed in the distance. I turned and saw myself walking toward me. Not the shadow, not the thing from the glass. Me. 3:40 a.m. The final choice, it stopped a few feet away, smiling. You weren't supposed to escape, it said. But now that you're here, you can't leave. My fists clenched. Watch me, it laughed. All right, let's make a deal. I swallowed hard. What kind of deal? I stepped closer. Too close. One of us gets to be real. The mirrors around us shook. The other stays trapped. Forever. The air went ice cold. Choose. 3:45 a.m. Who am I? I could feel it watching me. Waiting. How do you prove you're the real one? How do you fight a reflection that thinks it's you? My mind raced. There had to be a way. Then I realized a reflection is only real as long as someone believes in it. I took a slow breath, steeled myself, and whispered, "You're not me." The thing's smile faltered. The mirrors trembled. I took a step forward. "You're just a copy." Cracks spread across the glass walls. The reflection's grin turned into a snarl. Its form began to glitch, warping in and out like a bad signal. I reached out and touched its chest. "You don't exist." It shattered. 4 a.m. Back to reality? I gasped as I snapped awake. I was lying on cold pavement, back in the city. People walked past me. Someone asked if I was okay. They could see me. I let out a shaky breath. I was back. But then, I saw my reflection in a passing car window, and for just a second it was still smiling. Do not respond. Episode 10. The reflection is still watching. 4:05 a.m. Back in the real world? I sat on the pavement, my breath ragged. Cars rushed by. People walked past. The city felt real again. But something was wrong. My reflection in the car window, it was still smiling. My phone buzzed. I hesitated, then looked down. A new message. Unknown. You didn't win. It's still inside. For 10 a.m., the echo in the glass, I scrambled to my feet, forcing myself to breathe. It's just paranoia, I told myself. Just trauma messing with my head. Then, as I stepped away from the car, I saw it again. In a store window this time. My reflection wasn't moving with me. It was a half second behind, like an old video lagging. And then it blinked. I hadn't blinked. I staggered backward, heart hammering. Another message came in. Unknown. You have 24 hours before it takes over again. For 30 a.m., the other version of me, I left the city streets, ducking into a 24-hour diner. I needed to think, to figure out if I was still myself. The place was empty, except for a man sitting at the far end of the counter. He had a hood pulled over his face, but something about him felt off. Then he turned, and I felt my blood turn to ice. It was me, not the reflection, not the thing from the glass. A third version. It grinned, tilting its head. How do you know you're the real one? For 45 a.m., the truth about the reflections, I gripped the table, my breath coming in short gasps. What the hell are you? I whispered. The other me leaned forward. You think you escaped? Chuckled. You're just another version of yourself. And you only have one day before you fade away. I shook my head. That's not possible. It shrugged. Look around. Do you really feel solid? Do you really feel real? I opened my mouth to argue, but I couldn't, because deep down I felt it. I was fading. 5 a.m. The clock is ticking. I stumbled out of the diner, my legs weak. I had 24 hours. I had to find a way to stop this before I disappeared completely. My phone buzzed. Another message. Unknown. There's only one way to fix it. You have to erase the original. I swallowed hard. The original? Did that mean I had to kill the thing still trapped in the mirror? 5:30 a.m. The return to the glass, I made my way back to the alley where it all began. The broken mirror was still there, shattered on the ground. But the reflection was whole, and it was waiting for me. I stepped closer, my breath fogging up the glass. I need to end this, I whispered. The reflection smiled. You sure about that? Then it raised its hand, and I felt my own fingers move, even though I wasn't controlling them. 6 a.m. The final test, I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to stay focused. The reflection and I weren't separate anymore. It was pulling me back. I grabbed a piece of the broken mirror, my hands trembling. If I destroy this, do I die too? No answer. I lifted the shard and plunged it into the reflection. 6:05 a.m. The world shatters, the glass exploded. I was falling again, through reflections, through memories, through 1,000 versions of myself. Some screaming, some laughing. Then everything stopped. I hit the ground. I gasped, my lungs burning. And when I looked up, the mirror was gone. The alley was silent, and my phone was blank. No messages, no time left, just a single word on the screen. Reset. 6:10 a.m. Am I still me? I staggered into the sunlight, my head spinning. People looked at me again. I existed, but something felt different. I caught my reflection in a store window. It looked normal. But deep inside the glass, for just a second, I thought I saw something watching me and smiling. Do not respond, episode 11. The mirror was never broken. 6:15 a.m. A false sense of freedom. The sun was rising. I stood on the sidewalk watching people rush past. For the first time in hours, maybe days, I felt real. No more whispers. No more twisted reflections. I existed again, or so I thought. Then my phone buzzed. A single notification. Unknown. Look closer. My stomach twisted. I turned my head, glancing at the store window beside me, and there it was, a hairline crack in the glass. The mirror had never been broken. 6:30 a.m. The voices return. I took a step back, my breath coming in short bursts. The crack in the glass spread, spiderwebbing outward in slow motion. And from the other side, I heard it. The knocking. Knock, knock, knock. Soft at first, then insistent, then a whisper. You didn't finish it. I turned and ran. 7 a.m. The city is changing. The world around me shifted. At first, it was subtle. A street sign misspelled. A building that looked taller than it should. Then it got worse. People walking past me had no faces. Cars moved without drivers. The sky was too still, the clouds unmoving. I wasn't in the real world. I was still inside the mirror's trap. I never escaped. 7:45 a.m. The repeating message. I stopped in a cafe, my hands shaking as I ordered coffee. The barista looked normal. For a second, I thought maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. Then I glanced at the receipt. There was no price, no store name. Just one sentence printed over and over again. You have to go back. 8:30 a.m. The man who knew. I found him in the back of the cafe. A man in a suit, staring into his coffee like he had seen something impossible. He looked up as I sat down. You see it too, don't you? He whispered. I swallowed hard. What am I seeing? His fingers twitched, gripping the table. The world isn't real. We're just copies, reflections of something bigger. I felt my stomach drop. Then where's the original? His lips parted, but no sound came out. Then his eyes rolled back, his mouth opening wider and wider, and his face cracked like glass. 9:15 a.m. The escape that never was. I ran again, back onto the street, away from the cafe, away from the illusion. I needed answers. I needed proof that I was real. Then I saw it. A store window with my reflection staring back. But this time it wasn't smiling. It looked afraid. And then, for the first time, it mouthed words to me. "You're still inside." 10 a.m. The final message. My phone buzzed one last time. I hesitated, fingers shaking as I unlocked the screen. One final message. Unknown. Go back to where it started. The alley. The first mirror. The place where I made the switch. I didn't want to go back, but I had no choice. 11:30 a.m. The place where I died. The alley was empty. No broken glass. No cracks in reality. Just a single standing mirror. Waiting. I took a deep breath and stepped in front of it. My reflection was already there. Shook its head. "It's too late," it whispered. Then the mirror rippled and something pulled me inside. 12 p.m. The final switch. I opened my eyes. I was on the ground. My hands trembled as I sat up, my breath sharp. And when I looked up, I was back in my apartment. The city was outside my window. The air felt different, heavy. I rushed to the mirror. My reflection moved normally. Everything looked normal. But then I noticed it. A tiny crack at the edge of the mirror. A whisper behind me. "Welcome back." I turned, and the lights went out. Do Not Respond, Episode 12. The crack in the mirror is growing. 12:10 p.m. The whisper behind me. I spun around. The apartment was empty, but I had heard it. A whisper, soft as breath against my ear. "Welcome back." The air felt thick, pressing against my skin. Something wasn't right. My eyes darted back to the mirror, and that's when I saw it. The crack, it was growing. 12:30 p.m. The call from nowhere. My phone rang. Not a text, not a notification, an actual call. Unknown caller. My fingers hovered over the screen. My entire body screamed at me not to answer. But I did. "Hello." Silence. Then, "Are you sure you're in the right world?" A chill crawled up my spine. The line went dead. 1 p.m. The reflection moved. First, I tried to distract myself. Ate food I couldn't taste. Turned on the TV, but the sound was distorted. Then, as I walked past the mirror, I saw it. My reflection. It had moved before I did. I froze. Stood there, breathing, waiting. Then, its mouth curled into a slow, deliberate smile. And it reached out. Not toward me, toward the crack in the glass. I backed away, heart hammering. My phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen. Unknown. Don't let it out. 1:30 p.m. The first ripple. The lights flickered. The air in the room shifted, like pressure was building inside the walls. I grabbed a towel, threw it over the mirror. Out of sight, out of mind. But then, the fabric sank inward, pulled against the glass as if something was breathing on the other side. I ripped the towel away. The crack had spread across the entire surface. And behind it, something was moving. 2 p.m. The wrong reflection. I took a step forward. The mirror rippled, like the surface of a pond disturbed by a single drop of water. I lifted my hand. So did my reflection. Then it tilted its head and whispered, "You're the copy." I stumbled back, my lungs squeezing for air. The whisper came again, this time inside my skull. "You were never the real one." 2:30 p.m. The second switch. My hands trembled as I texted the unknown number. "Me, what do I do?" 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then a reply. Unknown. The crack is a door. Can't be closed anymore. You have to decide who walks through. My chest tightened. I had to choose. Who gets to stay? Who gets erased? I looked up and my reflection was already smiling. 3 p.m. The reflection moves on its own. The lights dimmed. The walls seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. My reflection lifted its hand, even though I didn't. It was choosing for me. I ran. 3:45 p.m. Trapped again, I sprinted down the hall, but no matter where I turned, the apartment door was gone. Every exit led back to the mirror. The crack had grown wider, and now something was stepping through. A leg, a hand, a face that looked exactly like mine. Time to switch. 4 p.m. The final choice. I had seconds left. It reached for me, fingers too long, too thin. I grabbed the heaviest thing I could find, a lamp, and swung it at the mirror. Glass exploded around me. The world shattered, and then silence. 4:10 p.m. Am I still me? I woke up on the floor. The mirror was gone. My reflection was back to normal. Had I won? I reached for my phone, hands shaking. No messages. No unknown numbers. Then I caught my reflection in the window, and for just a second I thought I saw it wink. Do not respond. Episode 13, The Reflection That Refuses to Die. 4:15 p.m. Something is still here. I sat on the floor, staring at the empty frame where the mirror had been. The room was silent, too silent. My breath was the only sound, shallow and uneven. I had shattered the mirror. I had won, hadn't I? Then a knock, soft, measured. Knock, knock, knock. My phone buzzed. Unknown. It's not over. 4:30 p.m. The door that shouldn't exist. I forced myself up, legs weak, my mind fogged with exhaustion. The knock came again, but this time, it wasn't from the door. It was from inside the wall. Slowly, I turned, and there it was, a door that hadn't been there before. Faint scratches lined the surface, as if something had clawed at it from the inside. Another buzz. Unknown. You have to finish it, before it finds a way out. 4:45 p.m. The other side. I swallowed hard, my fingers trembling as I reached for the knob. The metal was ice cold. I twisted it slowly, the door creaking open. Beyond was nothing but darkness, a void. I stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind me, and then the whisper started. 5 p.m. The room of lost reflections. The darkness lifted, replaced by a dim, flickering light. I stood in a massive, endless space. Mirrors surrounded me, hundreds, maybe thousands. Each one held a version of me. Some looked normal. Some were wrong, twisted faces, elongated limbs, empty eyes. And then I saw it, the reflection I had been running from, standing in the center of the room, waiting, smiling. 5:15 p.m. The final challenge? You thought you won? His voice was mine, but colder. You thought breaking the mirror would fix it? I clenched my fists. I destroyed you. It laughed, a hollow, echoing sound that filled the space. You shattered the glass, but you never shattered me. The mirrors around us rippled, as if reality itself was coming apart. There's only one way to end this. I stepped forward. We become one. 5:30 p.m. The fusion or the erasure. The air thickened, pressing against me like a weight. I could feel it, the pull. It wasn't trying to kill me. It was trying to absorb me. You and I are the same, it whispered. Two halves of the same whole. My mind screamed at me to run, but my body wasn't listening. I felt myself stepping forward. The mirrors shattered around us, and then we collided. 5:45 p.m. Inside the reflection I was falling. No light, no sound, just endless fragments of my own memories, swirling around me. I saw myself as a child. I saw myself in the mirror for the first time. I saw the moment the switch happened. This is where we decide. I turned. The reflection stood there, watching me. Only one of us can leave. 6 p.m. The choice. It stepped closer, its hand reaching out. Do you know who you are? I hesitated. I had spent so much time running, so much time questioning. Say your name, it whispered. I opened my mouth and nothing came out. The reflection grinned. Then I win. 6:05 p.m. The final struggle. Panic surged through me. I had to fight. I was real. I clawed at the air, grabbing at something, anything. And then I felt it. A single shard of broken glass floating in the void. I gripped it tightly and lunged. The shard sank into the reflection's chest, screamed, and the world erupted in light. 6:15 p.m. Back to reality? I gasped, sitting up. The apartment was silent. The mirror was gone. My phone was on the floor. I picked it up with shaking hands. One last message. Unknown. It's over. For now. I stood, looking at my reflection in the window. It looked normal, but deep inside the glass, for just a second, I thought I saw it wink. Do not respond. Episode 14. The reflection is still waiting. 6:20 p.m. The wrong kind of silence. The apartment was too quiet. Not the normal kind of silence. The kind that presses against your ears. The kind that makes you wonder if something is listening. I stared at my reflection in the window. I stared back. Nothing unusual. But my gut told me something was off. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown. Check again. 6:30 p.m. The small movements. I looked back at the window. For a moment, everything seemed fine. Then my reflection blinked. Half a second too late. I took a step back, heart pounding. It was watching me. Not copying. Not mirroring. Watching. 6:45 p.m. The video message. My phone buzzed again. A new message. Not text this time. A video file. My fingers hovered over the screen. I didn't want to open it, but I did. The screen flickered. First just static. Then a video of me, lying in my bed, sleeping. Only I wasn't alone. 7 p.m. The shadow in the room. I turned in my chair, scanning the apartment. Empty. But on the screen, a shadow stood at the edge of my bed, unmoving, watching me. My breath hitched as the shadow stepped closer. Then the screen went black, and my phone buzzed again. Unknown. It's already inside. 7:15 p.m. The faint footsteps. I held my breath. Then I heard it. A single, soft footstep. Coming from behind me. I whipped around. Nothing. But my reflection. It was smiling. 7:30 p.m. The door that locked itself. I rushed to the apartment door. Tried the handle. Locked. I hadn't locked it. I grabbed my keys, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold them. Another footstep. Closer. My phone buzzed. Unknown. If you open the door, it will leave with you. 7:45 p.m. The reflection speaks. I turned to the window again. My reflection had stepped closer. I hadn't moved. Then it whispered, "You should have let me win." The glass shuddered, like something was trying to push through. I stumbled back, my chest tightening. This wasn't over. It had never been over. 8 p.m. The rules have changed. My phone vibrated violently. Another message. Unknown. You can't destroy it, but you can trap it. I swallowed hard, my hands trembling. Trap it? How? Another message. Unknown. A mirror only works if there's something to reflect. I frowned, my brain scrambling for meaning. Then it hit me. I needed a way to make it disappear, to erase its reflection. 8:30 p.m. The blackest mirror. I searched my apartment for anything reflective. Mirrors, windows, even the black screen of my TV. One by one, I covered them. The reflection had nowhere left to go, except for one last surface. My phone. I lifted it slowly, letting the darkened screen show my face. My reflection was still there, but something was wrong. Its eyes weren't mine. They were empty. Then it grinned, and the screen cracked. 9 p.m. The final trap. My heart pounded as I looked around. Every mirror was covered, every reflection gone, except one. The small, round hand mirror on my dresser. The one I had forgotten about. I turned to it slowly. The reflection was waiting for me. It lifted a hand and pointed, not at me, at the black bedsheet I had thrown over the large mirror. The one that had started all of this. I felt the air shift. Then the knocking started again. Knock, knock, Knock. 9:30 p.m. The choice I had to move fast. The mirror was a doorway, and doorways could be sealed. I grabbed the hammer, took a deep breath, and swung. Glass shattered. The air rippled. A deafening screech filled the room. Then silence. 10 p.m. Am I safe? I sank to the floor, my body trembling. The mirror was gone. The reflections were gone. But the room felt too empty. I reached for my phone. No messages. I let out a slow breath, forcing myself to my feet. Then I caught a glimpse of something in the TV screen. For just a second, a smile. Then nothing. Do not respond. Episode 15. The reflection never left. 10:15 p.m. The smile in the screen eye didn't move. I barely breathed. For just a second, I had seen it. A smile. Not on my face. Not in the mirror. But in the dark screen of my TV. I forced myself to turn slowly. The screen was blank now. Just my reflection staring back. Normal. I exhaled. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown. You missed one. 10:30 p.m. The last reflection, my pulse pounded in my ears. I had destroyed the mirrors, covered every reflective surface. But the message, I turned in a slow circle, scanning the room. The windows, covered. The bathroom mirror, shattered. Then, a chill ran down my spine. I took a hesitant step toward my phone. The screen was dark. My reflection stared back, and then it blinked. But I hadn't. 10:45 p.m. The phone is not safe. My breath caught in my throat. The phone screen was small, black, a reflection just barely visible. But it was still there, still alive, and I had just made a horrible mistake. I had thought breaking the mirrors was enough. But reflections don't need glass. They just need any surface that sees you. My phone, the TV, even my own eyes. I grabbed my phone and turned it face down. Then my TV screen flickered. 11 p.m. The TV turns on by itself. I didn't touch the remote. I didn't press a single button. But the TV screen lit up. Static hissed from the speakers, sharp and grating. Then the screen changed. Not a channel. Not a video. It was my apartment. Live footage. And I was in it, sitting on the couch. But I wasn't alone. Something stood behind me. 11:15 p.m. The thing in the room, my blood turned to ice. I spun around. Nothing. I looked back at the screen. The thing was closer now. I could make out its shape, a silhouette slightly off, slightly wrong. Its head tilted, just like my reflection used to do. Then the screen flickered. A new message appeared. Unknown. It's learning. 11:30 p.m. IT speaks. The air felt heavy. The room felt smaller. Then a whisper. You thought you got rid of me. I stiffened. The voice came from everywhere. No, not everywhere. From inside me. I don't need the mirrors anymore. 11:45 p.m. The final game. I stumbled back, my breath ragged. What do you want? I whispered, a low chuckle. I already told you. The lights flickered. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the floor. The TV screen glowed. A single sentence appeared in bold, flickering text. Let me in. 12 a.m. The choice, my fingers curled into fists. I had spent too long running. I wasn't running anymore. I grabbed the remote, turned off the TV. The screen faded to black. Silence. Then the reflection in the screen tilted its head. Even though the TV was off, it was still there, waiting, smiling. This isn't over. Do not respond. Episode 16. The reflection is now inside. 12:05 a.m. The smile that shouldn't exist. The TV was off. The room was dark, but the smile was still there. A faint, lingering curve of lips in the black screen. Not my smile. Not a reflection. Something else. Watching. Waiting. I felt the air shift, and then I heard it. A whisper. I don't need the mirror anymore. 12:15 a.m. The empty apartment. I backed away, my breath shallow. My apartment felt different. Not just the eerie silence. Not just the weight in the air. The walls felt wrong. The corners stretched too far. The shadows clung too long, like the space around me was changing. Then my phone buzzed. A message. Unknown. You let it in. 12:30 a.m. The first sign. I forced myself to breathe, to think. It's inside. But what did that mean? I checked my reflection in the kitchen window. It was normal. I turned to the hallway mirror. Still normal. I exhaled. Then I looked down at the polished surface of my phone screen, and it blinked. 12:45 a.m. The footsteps in the walls. I threw my phone across the room. It hit the carpet with a soft thud. Then I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Not from the floor. Not from outside. From inside the walls. Slow. Deliberate. Like something walking just behind the surface. Then a whisper. You don't belong here. 1 a.m. The door to nowhere. I ran. Not out of the apartment. I knew it would follow. Instead, I ran to my bedroom, locked the door, pressed my back against it. Silence. Then knock. 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 I clenched my fists. Then I noticed something impossible. There was a new door in my room. One that had never been there before. A simple wooden door standing where my closet used to be, with something scratching at the other side. 1:15 a.m. The choice. I had two options. Stay here and wait for whatever was inside the walls to find me. Open the new door and see where it led. Neither choice felt safe, but I had to move. I reached for the handle. The door swung open and I fell through. 1:30 a.m. The room of lost versions. I landed hard. The air was cold. Too cold. I stood slowly, my muscles aching. Then I saw them. Mirrors. Hundreds of them, stretching into endless darkness. And in every single one, a different version of me. Some looked normal. Some were wrong. Twisted features, hollow eyes, mouths open in silent screams. Then I saw one that made my blood run cold. One mirror, one reflection. But it wasn't a copy. It was me, and I was pounding on the glass. 1:45 a.m. Am I the wrong one? I stumbled back, shaking my head. No, this isn't real. The reflection inside the mirror screamed, but I heard nothing. Muted, trapped. Then the whisper came. You switched places. You're the copy now. I turned, and something stepped out of the shadows. 2 a.m. The true form. It wasn't just a reflection anymore. It was tall, too tall. Its limbs stretched unnaturally, its fingers twitching like broken wires. His face was my face, but melted, shifting, always changing. You don't get to leave, it whispered. I ran. 2:30 a.m. The last mirror. I darted through the maze of reflections, mirrors warping as I passed. I had to find a way out. Then I saw it. One mirror standing alone at the center of the void. Cracked. Familiar. The first mirror. The one I had broken. And beyond it, I saw my real apartment. A way back. I sprinted toward it. But the thing behind me was faster. 2:45 a.m. The final battle. I lunged for the mirror, fingers grazing the surface. But the thing grabbed my wrist. Stay, it hissed. Become one of us. Its grip burned, cold, wrong, like touching something that had never been human. I gritted my teeth. Then I did the only thing I could. I pulled it into the mirror with me. 3 a.m., back to reality? I hit the floor. Hard. I gasped, my lungs filling with air like I had been drowning. The apartment was normal again. No extra doors. No moving shadows. I looked at my reflection in the window. It blinked when I did. It moved when I did. I was back. I had won. Hadn't I? Then my phone buzzed. A single message. Unknown. Did you bring it with you? My stomach dropped. And behind me I heard breathing. Do not respond. Episode 17. The reflection is no longer just a shadow. 3:05 a.m. The breath behind me. I didn't turn around. Couldn't. The air in the room was thick. Heavy. My phone was still in my hand, the last message burning into my mind. Unknown. Did you bring it with you? Another breath. Closer. Something was in the room with me. And then knock, knock, knock. Not at the door. Not at the window. But at the inside of my closet. 3:15 a.m. The closet that shouldn't be there. I took a slow, measured step back, forcing my breath to steady. The closet door was shaking, rattling like something was trying to get out. No, like something was trying to switch places. My reflection had followed me, and it wanted back in. Another knock, 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 then a whisper. You left me there. 3:30 a.m. The mirror within the door. I reached for the handle, hesitating. If I opened it, what would I see? Another knock, this time more desperate. Let me out. My pulse hammered as I slowly twisted the knob. The door creaked open, and there, inside the closet, was a mirror. Not just any mirror. The first mirror. The one I had shattered. But now it was whole again, and my reflection was inside it, staring at me, smiling. 3:45 a.m. The switch is not over. You don't belong there. The reflection's voice was wrong, layered, like multiple voices speaking at once. I do. My body felt like lead. The air around me pulled, dragging me toward the glass, toward the place I had barely escaped. The mirror wanted me back inside. I gritted my teeth. I wasn't going back. I lunged forward and slammed the closet door shut. The walls shuddered. The knocking stopped. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then my phone buzzed again. Unknown. That won't hold it. 4 a.m. The house begins to change. I stumbled away from the closet, heart hammering. The floor beneath me creaked. No, it shifted, like the wood was breathing. The shadows stretched across the walls, warping in ways that shouldn't be possible. I wasn't in my apartment anymore, or at least, not in the version that belonged to me. The walls pulsed. The lights flickered. Then, from the closet, the whisper came again. This time, I'll be the one who gets out. For 15 a.m., the final battle for control. I backed away, hands shaking. If my reflection got out, if it took my place, would anyone even notice? Would I even notice? Another buzz. Unknown. There's only one way to stop it. I swallowed hard. Me? How? The reply came instantly. Unknown. Destroy every trace of it. I turned to the closet, to the mirror inside it, to the thing that was still watching me, smiling, waiting. Come back, and I'll let you go, it whispered. I grabbed the heaviest object I could find and swung, hard. For 30 a.m., the glass breaks, but not the reflection. The mirror shattered, but the reflection didn't. Instead, it stepped forward, out of the broken shards, out of the glass, into my world. I staggered back, the reality crashing down on me. I had destroyed the mirror, but now there was nothing left to contain it. It was free, and it was still wearing my face. 4:45 a.m. The final chase. I turned and ran. Through the shifting halls, the warping walls. I could hear it behind me, not running, just walking, like it knew there was nowhere left to go. I reached the front door, yanking at the handle. Locked. A whisper curled around my ear. I told you, you don't belong here. A hand grabbed my shoulder. 5 a.m. Who is real? I twisted, shoving it back. But it didn't stumble. It didn't even move. It just stood there, watching, waiting. I forced myself to breathe, to think. Then I asked the only question that mattered. If I don't belong here, then which one of us does? The reflection tilted its head and smiled. That's for you to decide. Do not respond. Episode 18. The reflection is taking my place. 5:05 a.m. The final standoff. We stood there. Two versions of me. Same height, same face, same everything. Except one of us didn't belong. The air between us felt like a thin layer of glass, waiting to shatter. I clenched my fists. The reflection smiled. You need to choose, it whispered. One of us has to go. 5:15 a.m. The game of proof. How do I know you're not me? The reflection cocked its head. That's the real question, isn't it? Took a slow step forward. I took a slow step back. You remember breaking the mirror? I nodded. I grinned. Then tell me, which one of us was on the other side? My mind reeled. Had I ever left? Or had I been the one trapped all along? 5:30 a.m. The first lie, I had to think fast. Fine, I said. If you're real, prove it. The reflection smirked. You first. I opened my mouth, then hesitated. Because I couldn't. I didn't know how. Neither of us did. And that's when I realized it didn't know if it was real either. 5:45 a.m. The world begins to fracture, the walls around us warped. Like reality itself was waiting for an answer. Waiting for one of us to decide. The reflection chuckled, tilting its head again. If neither of us can prove we belong. The walls shuddered. Then maybe we both disappear. 6 a.m. The final escape, I lunged. Not toward the reflection, but toward the nearest reflective surface. A shard of broken glass, still lying on the floor. I grabbed it and held it up to my face. And in that moment I knew, because in the glass I wasn't there. 6:15 a.m. Am I the reflection? My pulse pounded in my ears. No, I whispered. This is a trick. The reflection laughed softly. Is it? I held the shard tighter. My hands shook. I had thought I escaped. I had thought I won. But what if I was just another version of it? A reflection that had stepped into the real world. My stomach twisted. It's not possible, I whispered, but the mirror didn't lie. 6:30 a.m. The decision that can't be undone. You understand now, don't you? The reflection's voice was soft, pleased. There was never a switch. There was never an escape. I stepped closer, leaning in. One of us is real. The other is just a shadow. I swallowed hard. So choose. I lifted the shard of glass and made my choice. 6:45 a.m. The shattering, I slammed the shard down. Glass exploded around me. The reflection's smile faltered. Then it screamed. The world fractured. I was falling through mirrors, through reflections, through every version of myself that ever existed. And then silence. 7 a.m. Am I still here? I woke up gasping. The apartment was still. The walls were solid. The mirror gone. I stood, my legs shaking, my breath shallow. I turned to the nearest reflective surface. And for the first time, I saw myself. But before I could exhale, my phone buzzed. Unknown, you chose wrong. My blood ran cold. And from the dark corner of the room, I saw it. A shadow, watching, smiling, waiting. Do not respond, episode 19. The shadow that was left behind, 7:05 a.m. The message that changed everything, my breath hitched. The words on my phone screen burned into my mind. Unknown, you chose wrong. I turned slowly. The room was still, the air heavy, but in the darkest corner, a shadow stood, watching, waiting, smiling. 7:15 a.m. The shadow moves, I blinked, and it was closer. No sound, no movement, just closer. I backed up, heart pounding. What are you? It didn't answer. It didn't have to, because deep down I already knew. I had never defeated the reflection. I had let it in, and now it was free. 7:30 a.m. The rules have changed. My phone buzzed again. Another message. Unknown. It's not a reflection anymore. I swallowed hard. That was worse. Much worse. If it wasn't a reflection, then what the hell was it? I forced myself to breathe, to think. Then I turned to my window. My reflection was there, but it wasn't mine. It was just standing, motionless. And then it waved. 8 a.m. The voice in my head, the shadow didn't speak, but I heard it. You don't belong here. I clutched my head, gasping. The voice wasn't coming from outside. It was coming from inside me. It was burrowing deep, crawling through my thoughts, twisting my memories. Maybe you were never here at all. I stumbled, my vision swimming. I had to get out. I had to run. But where the hell do you run when the thing chasing you is already inside your mind? 8:30 a.m. The streets aren't safe, I ran. Out of my apartment, down the stairs, into the cold morning air. The city was awake. People walked by. Cars honked. Normal. Safe. But then I looked at the glass windows of a shop. Every single reflection inside was frozen. None of them moved, except for one. Mine turned its head toward me and grinned. 9 a.m. The mirrors are not mine, I kept walking. Every reflective surface, windows, car mirrors, even puddles on the ground. They all showed me wrong, out of sync, delayed, smiling when I wasn't. And then I saw one that wasn't smiling. It was screaming, silent, mouth open, hands pounding on the glass, like it was trapped, like it was begging for help. My stomach twisted. What if I was the wrong one? 9:30 a.m. The final message, I needed answers. I grabbed my phone, my hands trembling. Me, what do I do? For the first time, the reply wasn't instant. 3 dots appeared, then vanished, then reappeared. Then, finally, unknown. You can't escape, but you can switch. I stared at the words. Switch? I glanced at the nearest window, at the reflection inside. It wasn't smiling anymore. It was waiting. 10 a.m. The only way out, I took a slow, deep breath. Switch. That's what the message said. But how? My phone buzzed again. Unknown. Find the oldest mirror. The first one you ever looked into. I swallowed hard. I knew exactly where that was. 11 a.m. The return to the past. I stood outside the house I grew up in. It looked smaller now. Worn. Abandoned. But I knew the mirror would still be there. The one in my childhood bedroom. The one where I first saw something that wasn't me. I pushed open the door. The air inside was heavy with dust and memories. I walked up the stairs, to the room I hadn't entered in years. And there it was, the mirror, waiting. 11:30 a.m. The reflection is ready. I stepped closer. My reflection watched me. It didn't smile, didn't speak, just waited. I placed my palm against the glass. It did the same. For the first time in days, our movements were perfectly synced. Then the whispers came, not from the reflection, from the shadow behind me. It's not too late to choose. 11:45 a.m. The final choice. I had seconds left. One of us had to go. The real one. The copy. I pressed my forehead against the glass, my breath fogging the surface. Then I whispered the only thing that mattered. Take me back. The world shattered. 12 p.m. Back to reality? I gasped, stumbling back. The room was quiet. The mirror was whole. I turned. The shadow was gone. I let out a breath, shaking. Then I looked at my reflection. It looked normal, real. But then it leaned forward and whispered, "You're still on the wrong side." Do not respond. Episode 20, final episode. The reflection was never the enemy. 12:05 p.m. The last words. I stood there, frozen. The reflection had whispered, "You're still on the wrong side." My hands clenched into fists. No, this had to be a trick, a final mind game. But the air in the room felt wrong, heavy, like I was standing somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. I forced myself to breathe, and then the reflection smiled. 12:15 p.m. The fracture between worlds. The surface of the mirror rippled. Not like glass, like water. "If you're still here," I whispered, "then who am I?" The reflection's expression softened. It didn't look like a monster anymore. It just looked sad. "I tried to warn you," it whispered back. Then the world around me began to crack. 12:30 p.m. The room that wasn't real. I turned. The walls warped, bending at impossible angles. The floor stretched, like I was standing on the edge of something too big to comprehend. I had been so sure I had escaped. But now, looking around, I realized something horrifying. I had never left. I was still inside the reflection. 12:45 p.m. The realization, no. The reflection nodded slowly. You took my place. My breath came in short, sharp bursts. I had thought I was running from the reflection, but in reality I had become it. So if I'm here, where are you? The reflection hesitated. Then it whispered, in your world. 1 p.m., the other me. I stumbled back. My phone buzzed violently. I didn't even need to look. I already knew what it would say. Unknown. Look outside. I turned toward the window. Outside, across the street, I saw myself. Not a reflection. Not a shadow. Just me. Walking through the city. Living my life. As if I had never existed at all. 1:30 p.m. The final decision. How do I fix this? I demanded. The reflection, the real one, hesitated. You don't. There has to be a way. It exhaled slowly. There's only one. The glass between us rippled. You have to take your place back. I swallowed. How? The reflection's voice was barely a whisper. You already know. 2 p.m. The return to reality. I looked at my hands. I wasn't fading yet, but I could feel it coming, like the world was beginning to forget me. I had minutes left. I had to switch places. I placed my palm against the mirror. The reflection did the same. Our fingertips touched the glass, and I whispered, take me back. The mirror shattered. 2:15 p.m. Back to reality? I gasped, air filling my lungs. I was lying on the floor. The room was solid again. The shadows were gone. I turned my head slowly. The mirror was still there, but this time it only showed me. No delay, no whispers, just my own reflection. I had won, hadn't I? 2:30 p.m. The final message. I reached for my phone, hands shaking. There was one last message. From unknown. I hesitated. Then I opened it. Do not respond. I exhaled a shaky breath. For the first time in days, I felt free. I dropped the phone on the table and stood up. And then I caught it. The faintest movement. In the mirror, my reflection had turned away. Even though I hadn't moved, it was walking away from me. And just before it disappeared into the glass, it looked back and smiled. The end.